All right, we are taking a look at Anathema by EmptyStudios, and I'm joined by Empty. Welcome to the stream.
Hello, pleasure to be here.
All right, so I'll get the game going here, and in the meantime, can you tell me a little bit about your background in game development? And are you the solo developer on this project?
Yeah, I solo dev this one over the weekend. This is my seventh Ludum Dare, and I've been doing games professionally for about 7 years now.
Okay,
Um,
awesome.
I can't tell
Uh,
you where I work; I'd have to kill you. But aside from that, yeah, I've done like I've been working in like kind of higher end, so like AAA type stuff for a while now. It's pretty cool.
okay.
It's a good industry to get into. Would recommend people try.
Yeah, it's a rare gig to land, but I mean, it depends on the studio that you're working at. There's some very fulfilling work out there for sure. Just to quickly address the question here, a new jank. I did not manage to participate in Ludum Dare this time around. The theme didn't really call to me, so I do appreciate you asking. All right, so um, then we can move on to the next question. So, what was your inspiration for making this game?
Yeah, so I knew going into this it was going to be a bit rough because I'd only worked in Unity for
Hmm.
game jams before. This is the first time I ever touched Godot. So even before the theme was selected, I decided I'm going to do a top-down shooter of some kind,
Mhm.
and just like kind of, you know, associate it with whatever theme it is. Um, and yeah, I was inspired heavily by a game called Hunt Showdown, which is like this spooky right-click to aim before you shoot as well. People have been
Ah,
struggling with that.
okay.
Hunt Showdown, which is like this multiplayer PvPvE cowboy game. It's like kind of horror elements, and it's also heavily inspired visually by Darkwood, but it plays quite differently.
Hmm. Okay. I guess I like maybe I know those if I'd seen them, but I'm not familiar just from hearing the names.
Yeah, they're
Ooh,
they're out there. Hunt Showdown's by Crytek, but it's kind of lesser known, which is really interesting. It's a first-person shooter. Um, and yeah, it's a lot of fun. I'm quite obsessed with it. And if you play it or look into it, you'll see the DNA runs pretty deep in this game as well.
so am I understanding correctly that this is the first time you've used Godot to make a game, or among the first times?
I've I played around with it a few months ago briefly. I didn't even really get a prototype working. I just like kind of launched it, had Godot script, and hated everything. And then I was like, for this jam, because of all the Unity drama, I decided I would get to learning Godot a bit better.
Mhm.
I went with the C sharp route, which was much more familiar and much more comfortable to me because I like languages that don't really have type safety, which Godot script is quite bad with. C sharp, much more comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely got a fair bit of familiarity with C Sharp at this point. I also do Unity development as part of my day job, so it's yeah, it's something that we're feeling as well. The we're considering switching to Unreal at this point. Whoa, I can't reload. Oh man, I'm taking so much damage just from this one little squiggly guy. There we go. Oh, and I guess that's my health on the left side there. I think I just barely scraped by. There's a lot of very evocative writing that, unfortunately, I'd love to do my fancy voice, but or my sort of serious voice, whatever you call it.
There's
Um,
quite a bit of it, and it gets a bit repetitive, so I wouldn't stress too much about it. Most people actually skip through it, which yeah,
Unfortunately, it's hard for like I would much prefer that people try the game themselves and experience the story. Which, speaking of which, I will just make sure I drop the link in chat. Um, do the Skeletor voice again. For one of these, I will. For the next time that there's some lore text between. Let's see. Speed loader is reload the whole revolve. Ooh, no, I think I want that. Um, okay. Just because and I guess my health is persistent, huh?
yeah, it's quite brutal. Brutal. It's kind of meant to be like a roguelike where you replay it and lose a couple times. There's no win con yet, uh, but yeah, and there is some replayability. There's like RNG and what weapons and perks you'll get, um,
Hmm.
so it's replayable in that sense.
Oh, and I'm guessing that these enemies are only vulnerable to hit when they sort of glow like that.
Yeah, it's a bit hard to tell, but they bury themselves under the ground and they shoot spikes out.
Okay. Okay.
So you can't hit them while they're buried. Yeah.
All right. So one more, one more request from Chitori. Do a Skeletor voice one more time. Flies gather around the fire. Why do the boons still come? Okay, and then we gain the rifle or we fan the hammer. Um, let's try gaining the rifle. I want to see what another weapon is going to do here. Creaking and moaning, it begins anew. And that's it. I have to make the Skeletor voice like a point redemption thing from now on. Oh my gosh, there's so many enemies. And then I guess I can press the number 2 key, and now I've got the rifle. Whoop. Okay, never mind. We'll try the rifle again next time. 10k
This
point
is like kind of a
redemption.
thing I struggle with this in most jams is I make them way too hard
Mm.
because I kind of tune for what feels good for me. And like even knowing that and tuning it down, I still struggle. Like this in its current form, it's quite easy for me, but even then, it's still hard for first time players. So definitely a weakness I have.
Okay, was this supposed to happen? Am I starting again with the rifle this time?
You've got the shotgun; it gives you a random weapon
Oh,
each time you
oh,
go
okay,
through.
okay, okay. Reload, reload, reload. Oh gosh. Shotgun seems like a difficult starting weapon, what with the wide, or the small chamber. But I bet if I can line things up.
I find also there's a wide variety in skill sets. Like some people are quite good at top-down games, and other people definitely struggle. And that's not like a personal dig or anything. It's
Oh,
just
are you
like
sure?
it's just what it is. Um, yeah, it's a different like a lot of people don't even play these games. I think that's another
Mm.
problem with me. So I've played so many of these top-down games. I've played Darkwood is top-down. I've played a lot of Alien Swarm, which is like a cooperative shooter that's top-down.
Hmm.
Kind of builds that muscle memory, and you learn the patterns of like, oh, I have to kite in a circle in a certain way, and like AI generally behaves a certain way. Just more intuitive for me. But yeah, Hotline Miami is a great example. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I do know what you mean. Like you're kind of building out your sort of vocabulary for the genre, right?
Yeah,
Well, I'll do my best, but again, first and foremost, I'm just here to showcase gameplay a little bit while we chat. Um,
Uh,
can you talk a little bit about the development process?
yeah. So this one for jams, I pretty much just like I get an idea in my head pretty quickly usually. Um, and then I just go like there's not really a process, and this is like a pro and a con.
Mm.
I'm pretty flexible in like what I work on, and I just kind of firefight as I go. Um, and in that way, like I get a lot of like cute features in. Like you'll notice when you reload, like you'll drop the shells on the ground, and like have all the VFX and the AI is like kind of interesting. But the weakness is I actually didn't have a working game flow until the third day. Um,
Mm.
like literally, it was just like you're in a box with like one AI, and you fight one AI for like 48 hours of the jam.
Mm.
So it's like kind of risky and a bit of a problem, I think, but like it hasn't burnt me yet, so I'm kind of sticking to it. And that's not the same process I use for like working on longer term projects. For jams, I think it works well for me.
Yeah, of course. I think for there is this understanding that for a game jam, you can just kind of throw everything at the wall and do your best to work as hard as you can within a sort of like marathon sprint sort of session. And
Yeah, it helps me avoid like the mental overhead as well. Like I'm not really
mhm.
planning too far ahead. I have like a general shape in my head, like oh, it's gonna be top down, it's gonna be so and so enemies, and then I just like kind of chip away at it and like work on whatever interests me the most at the time.
Mhm.
And yeah, that's basically how it goes.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I so do you keep track of like development goals, stretch goals? Like, do you have a Google Doc or some kind of process, like anything along those lines?
If I was working in a team, I absolutely would, but because I'm solo, it's usually in my head or I have a notebook. What I like
Okay.
to do is I'll just like anytime anything comes to me, I straight away write it down straight in the notebook,
Hmm.
and I cross off stuff in the notebooks either because I've implemented the feature or because I've decided no, we like it's too much or it doesn't work. And that way, there's like a little bit of process there, I suppose. Um, but generally, it's all in my head,
Hmm.
especially like stretch goals, etc. I'm like, for this game, for example, the stretch goal was, oh, I want to get like 4 or 5 enemies in a boss.
Hmm.
And we didn't make that. I only got 3 enemies in, and it was only 2 enemies for the longest time. The third enemy, which is actually the main kind of mook, he was the last one added, and he was very last minute, like literally like the last 4 or 5 hours of the jam.
Oh
Um,
wow.
so he's mostly a copy paste of the little weird stick guy, but with slightly detuned parameters. So he's a bit more of like a that kind of shambling zombie type of guy.
These ones that I'm fighting right now that are just kind of shambling around.
Yeah, they get faster when you look at them, which I think most people don't realize.
No, I must admit I did not. Um, hmm. The shoot from the hips sounds interesting, but I actually realize I can't do without the aiming reticle.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think most people found that the hipfire perks were the strongest in the long term. Like
Hmm.
once you get to the later waves, you have to be constantly moving, and also the aim can kind of hurt you. As you see there, you can't turn quickly enough. You turn faster
Hmm.
when you're not aiming, and so like that's the thing. Also, I
Yeah.
just want to say like I think the game's like quite high cognitive load, so talking while playing also makes it a lot harder.
Oh, I don't know. We there are some games that I like seem to do just fine in playing while streaming, and then other games like honestly, it's a lot of like menu heavy games that are really challenging for me to play because if I have to like stop to read something, then no, I'd rather be paying attention to the guest and what they're having to say. And if I'm just kind of like moving around, aiming and shooting, it's not so bad. But yes, I will. I will gladly. What am I doing? I should gladly take the excuse and just say like, oh, absolutely, it's that. Oh my god.
It's like and like I said, like every game I make is just too damn hard. And I don't know. It's like a curse I have. It's every jam game, people are just like it's so difficult. I can't figure it out. So I don't know.
Well, you
Definitely
know,
don't blame the players. Like it's something I'm very aware of.
sure. I mean, I think that like that's a natural thing that like most game jams are have not had the opportunity for any playtesting and therefore are not balanced to the average to have that like nice difficulty curve. Like it's very difficult to get the balance right on a game jam.
Yeah, that's actually a big thing I do. I learned in like my third or fourth jam. It's a great idea to play test, and I do it
Hmm.
every time now. On usually day three, but sometimes day two if I get the game load working really early. I send a build out to some close friends, and I usually watch them play it. I dedicate an hour or two to simply sitting back and quietly watching people play, and that gives you so much information and helps you make the game a lot better. I find.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it. My problem is that a lot of the time, like also working solo most of the time, the games that I make for jams come together like right at the last minute. So there's very little opportunity for me to actually get it out in front of anybody. And like maybe I can sit my partner down and be like, "Hey, do you understand this at all? Like, can you try playing it?" And she's like, I." She does play games. It's just usually not necessarily the kinds of games that I'm making. So,
Yeah, for
um,
sure. Also, I think another tricky thing about jams is like people playing it are not. It's very different from making a game for a general audience,
mhm.
where in a jam, the people playing your game actually probably aren't interested in your genre that much. They're interested in playing jam games and giving feedback, which is very different to like if I put this game in front of someone who wants to play this kind of game, like they'd probably be quite good at it to start with, for
Mhm.
instance. So like the balancing is different for a jam. Like you should probably actually easier because people are probably not going to be good at your genre.
Yeah.
Um, but also people like have less attention span as well because they're not as invested in like the game as a game. They're invested in playing the game to give feedback. And you kind of have to temper yourself in like different ways for that and accept that like because people are playing a game that they normally wouldn't, it probably won't click for a lot of people I find that
Mm.
in a lot of my jam games. Like I made like a reactor simulator. It's like very SimCity style game, very simple. That sounds like that oversells it. It was pretty simple, but a lot of people who aren't into sim games played it during the jam, and they just like completely ricocheted off it. They had no clue what
Mm.
was going. But like the few people who were into that genre really like got into it. So that's like a tricky thing I've found to balance between the two.
Yeah, because you're absolutely right in that, like, when you are playing jam games, like especially me who is like opening up the floodgates and saying like, "Hey, submit your games. I'll give you feedback. I'll try them out." Like the number of games I play are incredibly few and far in between. Like I have a couple of favorites and a couple of genres that I actually like playing in. I don't know. There are some people who have like a more, or I guess maybe a less discerning palette, and they're happy to play games of any genre, and it's like more power to you. I'm gonna stick here with my Mario, Zeldas, um, Into the Breach. Not even most turn-based strategy games. Like I just Into the Breach specifically. So yeah, I do my best to be mindful of that and try to be discerning when I'm giving feedback and saying like, okay, well, what is going to help this become the best version of itself that it can be? I want to consider your artistic vision as the creator and try to give feedback tailored on that. So, when
Yeah,
it
for sure.
so when it comes to this game, like I'm if I take a pause from actually playing it and like rack my brain in terms of like what feedback I could give it. I mean, what feedback have you received so far?
It's been very positive, which is great. Like more than most of my previous games. People like pretty happy with this one, but it's usually like the game's too dark. I can't see anything, or it's like way too hard.
Mm.
And so like 1.02 actually addressed those a little bit and like nerfed a bunch of enemy stuff. And I added the gamma slider that you saw at the start of the stream, which I
Oh
think
my
has helped
gosh,
a
yeah.
lot. Um, because yeah, like I can't even see, yeah, like watching other people stream, literally like they couldn't see the trees around the edge because it was just too dark. So yeah.
Adjust the slider until the four creatures around the hunter are visible. I mean, this is also a little confusing to me because I couldn't tell what the creatures were because without
Yeah,
them
yeah.
moving, like this one
Kind of
here.
knew. Yeah. Yeah, he's a bit of a trickster. This I because it was thrown together last minute, like literally it was last night, and I was
Mm-hmm,
just like, I've got to put a gamma slider in because like people are literally they can't play the game. It's too
mm.
dark on some monitors. Um, so I just like hammered it together as quickly as I could, and I know it's a little bit confusing, but I didn't have really the time or the energy to like some nice visual gradient thing, industry standard gamma slider. You know what I mean? I just
Yeah,
like
yeah.
got it in as quickly as I could, and I think it's helped. The comments are a lot more positive on the brightness now.
No, that's
So
good. Yeah, because I see what you mean. I can still see the enemies because they glow, but I'm bumping into the trees and not seeing them. Like that is definitely.
yeah, and the enemies, it's this is also a really tricky thing. Is the enemies are intended to be hard to see when their eyes aren't glowing,
Mm-hmm.
not impossible. It's meant to be like obviously like you're in a creepy forest fighting like these horrible demonic creatures, and they blend in. Like that's the vibe I'm going for. Is it's like, when you're monsters in plain sight, like it's there, but you don't notice it because it blends in too well. That kind of feeling, and it's like
Mm-hmm.
very hard to balance that, especially when like the brightness is a bit inconsistent between monitors. You can go from like subtly you can spot him, but it's completely impossible to ever see the enemy. So there's like a fine line to walk there.
Yeah, but I think that actually it is mostly the issues the trees because you'll be trying to like move and kite enemies and doing that like advanced movement as you were describing, and then you bump into something because you couldn't see it. Like
Yeah, yeah,
that,
yeah, because it's black on black.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And then like if you made the trees more visible, then you could still keep the like very atmospheric vibe and the difficulty of seeing the enemies because then the player is like scouring around looking for them, but then at least they feel like they're not tripping over themselves in the dark. Because again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like that's not the intent here.
Yeah, no, you're not like it's meant to be moody and dark with the
Hmm.
trees, but you are meant to be able to clearly see them. And the gamma setting you had on when you were playing initially looked pretty correct from my
Yeah,
perspective.
I
Again, it's all
mean,
this like drove me nuts, but like on different monitors it's different. And when someone
yes,
streams, I also don't see what they see because
no,
like what comes through the stream comes through my monitor, which again is like twisted from reality. So it's
yeah.
like it's I think it's a curse problem that like every spooky game dev has to grapple with. And I've never made a horror game before, so I guess I wasn't as cognizant of it before the jam. But yeah.
Whoop. I've experimented with making one game before where there was a lighting system that like restricted how much you could see. Um, so I don't have a lot of feedback to give in that regard, but the I'm actually curious. I'm gonna pull it up now that I mention it. It's called "There's a Zombie in My Closet," and it is a top-down game, but it's mostly to do with this kind of like it's more melee based, the combat. So this was the there's always the field of view around the player, and then there's like the sort of flashlight of whatever you're looking at, and then there were ambient sources of light in the environment like televisions or windows.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I
that's cool.
guess in here we've got like the one sort of central light coming from the fire. Um, I think if the player had a small like light source around them, then they would illuminate trees as they got near them, and then that would help you see and guide like pathfind around them.
Yeah, I probably should have done that, to be honest. Also, another issue is the bark of the tree is like very dark, but that's the
Hmm.
part. This is kind of an idiosyncrasy with the 2D shadows in Godot. You see, like the inside of the tree is in the
Yeah.
shadow, so it kind of is all the same color as the terrain, which wasn't really the intent, but it just like kind of slipped my mind as I was developing. If I could change it, I would probably make the bark a bit brighter, so like you can see the circle, the rim of the tree a bit nicer.
Right. Yeah. No, I definitely see what you mean, and well, that one was just barely moving, but I still shot it. Um, So, uh, don't even get me started on people's eyes. The mechanic is so tight and contained, it's hard to even think of things that would be worth changing. It might be interesting to make it so the weapon you take between rounds is linked to some kind of effect going into the next round. Hmm.
Yeah, the weapons are a bit of a problematic thing because I found it was too late to fix it at the time, but I found you would want to focus perks on one gun, and that would make it quite powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then if you bought a second gun, it would be much weaker, so you're kind of disincentivized from weapon swapping during combat. Um, so I would probably have to rework the perk system a little bit there, or maybe make it so you only get one gun per run or something. Would be a good change. It's not as tight as I'd like in terms of like that. I kind of wanted people to swap weapon on the fly, but the balance doesn't really encourage that. So yeah,
I'm
you
almost.
do. There
Oh,
are actually differences between the guns cheatery.
mhm.
The each weapon aims at a different speed, so the revolver lets you swivel while aiming quite quickly.
Mhm.
Um, and I think movement speed isn't changed. I think movement speed is static between all three, but because of like the different way you use them, they kind of have inherently different mobility. Like the rifle makes you kind of plant yourself because you're generally aiming and just firing over and over again.
Okay, there's a lot of enemies here. I don't think I've made it past the fourth round, which like is not inherently a problem. Whoa, got trapped. Realized there was no way to get around those trees there. Um, so I would say the game that has encouraged me to swap between multiple weapons the most is probably Doom Eternal, and that's just because of the way that it handles ammunition. Um,
Yeah.
One thing that is very gamey but would be kind of interesting is if you ran out of ammo on one gun, it just kind of automatically switched you to another where you still had ammo, because that way you'd kind of encourage players to switch weapons without having to like you use a gun until it runs out of ammo and then it switches on you automatically. Like you don't even have to reload. You're just sort of like constantly switching. Um, I don't know, just thought of it in the spur of the moment there, but I understand that
Yeah, yeah.
switching is kind of like, well, I don't know, like, do you even if the guns feel different, is there a time and a place that you would use one over another?
Yeah, exactly. I was about to say that. Like, that's another problem with the design that needs a bit of tweaking. Is the guns kind of function pretty similarly. They
Mm,
have like vague differences in like the movement patterns and the aiming patterns you use with them, but generally speaking, like you're dodging in a similar way and you're killing things in a similar way. The guns kind of convergently evolved to kind of be useful in all situations, which does also disincentivize swapping. You're 100% right. Um, Part of that is probably the fact that I made it so you only get one weapon to start with, so you
hmm
kind of it has to be a jack of all trades.
Yeah.
But maybe like future changes would be like there's like some base weapons. So like the rifle, the shotgun, and the revolver are base weapons, and they're like very generically good. But maybe there's like a bolt action rifle, and that one is like you can't start with that, but it's very powerful at like one specific thing.
hmm
Like one that I was thinking about that never did, but would be fun is like ye oldie Gatling gun, which I really wanted to do, but like I don't think I could have balanced it for one, and it would have been a lot of effort. But type of thing where it's like they're more like high powered power ups later on in the run, where you're fighting also like bigger waves with nastier enemies. So like specialization and more powerful weapons can kind of come into the fold.
Yeah, because I can imagine a version of the game where you sort of start with, let's say, two different weapons, maybe one that is good at hitting things at a distance and one that's hitting things up close. And then the other weapons sort of branch from those. Like you get a gun that is really good, like a sword or something that can only hit things directly in front of you. Yes, a gun called a sword, but just something that is like very heavily specialized for like whacking things directly in front of you, but cannot hit things from a distance at all. And then you need to make sure that you include enemy types that the player isn't just like constantly swinging a sword back and forth in front of them. Like there has to be an enemy that like attacks at a range that you can't chase down. You need to use a gun to kill them. Um, and then you can do the opposite. You can have like a sniper rifle, which is absolutely terrible at picking off something in front of you, but maybe it like um, auto aims at things that are really far away. Like again, Doom Eternal, one of the most player empowering decisions they made is when you quick scope with the sniper rifle, it will auto aim at enemy weak points. So you get this feeling of, oh, look at me, I'm so good at aiming, but all you're doing is just constantly quick scoping on things and shooting them. So it's I don't necessarily like I played it on a Game Pass trial and it's not I didn't finish it, but analyzing it for those kind of design decisions was fascinating.
Yeah, I really want to get around to Eternal because it has exactly the kind of combat that I like in games, but it just has been on my backlog for such a long time.
I think it really is something that you can hop into just over the course of a weekend because it is a fascinating design case study. And as a designer, I think it is influencing this very conversation. You're going to see things in that game that are just like, oh, okay, cool. I see how they did that. Like, I'm not saying it's applicable to all scenarios, but if you like that kind of like fast-paced, action intense, switching around weapons, making use of your environment. Like it's a game that does a surprising amount of things to make the player feel badass. Like they really want you to feel like the Doomslayer, right?
Yeah, yeah. I played 2016 and I loved it, but yeah, just Eternal. Yeah, I know a little bit about like the gameplay and it looks like a
hmm
really cool iteration. I'm a huge fan of like how they've incorporated weapon switching as like a intentional mechanic because in a
Yeah.
lot of games like weapon switching is like it's like semi-intentional, I would
hmm
say. But whereas in Eternal, it looks like they've far more leaned into it. It's like, no, they really want you to do combos and stuff like that. I think that's a really cool space for a shooter. Yeah.
Yeah.
Many games have done that. There was like Bulletstorm back in the day, but
Oh
I don't think
yeah.
even that game did it that well. Eternal looks like it's like a new kind of idea, I think, or at least the first game that's like executed it well.
hmm Yeah, the funny thing was I played a jam game a while back. I know Weaver. I always forget the name of it though. I think it's like Captain Dino Hater, which the devs said that they were influenced by Doom Eternal. I'm like, wow, I am enjoying your jam game so much. I must try the source material.
Well, now you have from me. You can try Hunt, throw down, and you can play Darkwood. Those are both excellent games. And they heavily
Okay,
inspired this.
here we go. Captain Dino Hater. If you don't have time to play Doom Eternal, you can at least give this a try. Oh my gosh, yeah, it's not even that long ago. It was 2021. This was also a really fun interview. Let me see if I can. Captain. Yep, there we go. Here is the interview for that particular game. I will share that link in chat as well. This is from a different setup and a much shorter hair version of me. Um, anyway, so yeah, I guess I didn't get around to asking this one, right? What was the most difficult problem that you encountered during the jam? What was your solution?
Um, I've been thinking about answering this and I've forgotten what I had. It was probably, I guess I talked about it a bit earlier. It was getting the game loop going. It wasn't so much like a problem with like the technical side of it because it was pretty straightforward once I actually got to it. It's just like I didn't really want to do it because I knew it would be a pain. I guess like in Godot, I was looking for like a scriptable object
Yeah.
kind of thing, and I couldn't figure out like a good way to get that kind of asset. I'm sure it exists. I know there's resources or custom resources, but that looked like a can of worms that was going to eat too much time. So
Hmm.
literally all the wave data is hard coded in C sharp, um,
Uh,
which is awful. It's really bad. I just knew a bunch of structs and like slammed them into other structs, and it's grotty. Um, but it's kind of what I had to do to get it across the line. Because, like I said, it was day three, and I just didn't have um, enough time to really engineer like a nice solution. But I think it mostly worked because even though the waves are identical each time you play through, the AI behaves in such a pattern that it doesn't feel too repetitive replaying it.
mhm.
Like you'll notice that you get certain enemies on certain waves. There's a little bit of variety, like the numbers change slightly, but not much. Um, and it's mostly fine. It's mostly fine. What I really wanted to do was like have multiple waves, like a wave integer. You know what I mean? Like, oh, on this run you get like a bunch of these guys on wave two, whereas on another run you get like the underground guys instead on wave two.
Mhm, mhm.
But I didn't really have time to hook up a nice system for that. So I guess that was it. The other thing that gave me grief, which is really embarrassing, was the ones who move faster when you're looking at them.
Mm.
Um, because 2D in Godot is with an angle, not with like forward vectors. It took me a very long time to get the vector math right. That's not the vector math, the angle math right, because I just haven't done it in so long. I'm so used to working purely with vectors in Unity, even in 2D games. I was like, just let me dot product it. Because like the really annoying thing about like the Euler angle is like the looping around. Like it loops back to zero when it does the 360,
Oh,
and
right.
it's just like it just makes all the math so annoying. And like I just struggled with that. It was also like I did it at a bad time. It was day two when I was
Mm.
coding that, and it was like super sleep deprived. So I didn't sleep very well the first night. Um, and just like I was like cooked. I've been jamming for like 20 hours, and like I really needed a nap, which I got on Sunday night. Um, but yeah, it was like perfect storm of like annoying math problem, tired me, and just like really wishing I could just do vector two dot dot,
Yeah.
but it wouldn't let me.
Uh, well, there we go. I made it to round seven. That's what do you say? Is that all right?
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Round eight is the final wave that is like handcrafted. After
Mm.
eight, it's just the same kind of waves but with boosted HP. But I'd say seven or eight is like you've beaten the game. I would
Okay.
call that a winning run.
Cool.
Um, yeah, seven in particular is quite rough. I really like pull out the stops. I'm like, no, your run ends here. You know what I mean? Like,
I did see an
good luck.
awful lot of enemies on screen there. Yeah.
Yeah, they come in fast, they come in hard. Wave eight is even worse because
Oh my god.
on wave seven I kind of keep them coming from the left and the right
Hmm.
because that's where the 3D sound is most effective. But on wave 8,
Oh,
like I pull out all the stops. They're coming
I
from
see.
every direction all the time, and the wave's really long. It's just kind of like the ultimate skill check. And I've only got to like wave 9 or 10, I think,
Hmm.
is my PB. So yeah, I reckon 7 is a good effort.
So the if anyone has any questions from chat, please make sure to get those in. I'm not sure if you mentioned, but do you have any plans for continuing development of the game? Obviously, you've pushed out a couple of like small fixes, but
Yeah, I might finish it up. This kind of happens every time where I'm like, oh, I should like finish this, wrap it up, and put it on Steam, and then just like then I look at the actual amount of work it's going to be, and like this, like I'm pretty happy with this as it is, but it needs more enemy types. It needs way more perks. Probably needs more level design because I don't think you could really ship with like just the campfire level.
I see. Yeah.
Um, and ideally, this kind of game, like people are going to expect like a boss and like a finale and that type of thing. Um, and I don't think like the only comparable game to like this exact design, like without changes, is like Devil Daggers. But I think Devil Daggers is so tightly and brilliantly designed. Like I'm not on that level where I can like say my enemies and my wave encounter is so good that that could be the whole game. Like I think it needs a bit more. So I don't know what I'll do with it. If I like, I'm in the mood, I guess in a couple of weeks, maybe I'll keep adding weapons and perks and enemy types. I have a few that I kind of wanted to add, but they got cut.
Mhm.
But I don't know at this stage. It's kind of up in the air, 50-50.
Sounds good. I mean, if you do end up updating a new version where you'd like another round of playtesting or feedback, I'd be happy to take another look. But yeah, in the meantime, are there any other projects that you have that I know you said you can't tell me where you work, but is there anything that you'd like to direct me to? Any other past Jam games, perhaps?
Um, it's all on my itch. That's basically where I put everything. I don't use Twitter anymore, and that was my only game dev social media.
Mm,
Um, but pretty much just like if you're interested in my work in the future, just follow me on itch. That's like the best place you'll find updates. Um,
sure. Well, I'll drop a link to
yeah.
that in the chat. And anything else you'd like to drop in there?
No, I don't think so. It's been pretty fun. Thank you for playing the game. Really appreciate it.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on. And if you have any updates to this game or any other Jam projects in future, always feel free to come on by and submit them.
Cheers.
All right. Have a good rest of your day. I guess it's evening for you, but yeah, thanks
Yeah,
again.
with my afternoon work to get to. All right.
All right.
Cheers, man. I'll catch you around.
Cheers. Bye for
Bye.
now.